Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Spartan Center here on LCAT. I'm Colin Casey, joined by Matt Rodolakis and Patrick Varhue. We begin this week with the World Series. The Chicago Cubs taking on the Cleveland Indians, two teams with massive World Series droughts. The series is tied at 1, guys. What are your thoughts so far on the series?
I've been very impressed with how the Indians have played. Not so much in Game 2, but definitely in Game 1, the way they really came out and took it to the Cubs. But I think that now that the Cubs, they really got their momentum back after that big Game 2. So I think that's going to be a bit of a premonition of what's to come.
Pat, who do you think's been the better of the two teams so far?
Well, they're tied at a game. Probably the Indians. They just looked great Game 1, and yesterday they were kind of shut down by Arrieta, but I think the Indians look better between the two games.
Yeah, I'm pretty surprised that the Indians have played this well in the postseason. I don't think anybody thought they were going to be in the World Series at this point. I thought a lot of people would say the Red Sox would eliminate them, and if they didn't, the Rangers would. Both those teams got eliminated. We now look at who do you guys have? Do you have the Cubs or the Indians winning the series? Matt, we'll start with you.
I had the Cubs even before the season. I think pretty much everyone had the Cubs before the season started, and that hasn't changed at any point at all this year, including now. I think that they should definitely win this series. They're the better team. They're the best team in baseball by far, and I think that they'll show that for the rest of the series like they did in Game 2.
Pat, you're shaking your head. What are your thoughts?
I strongly disagree. I think the Cubs are going to lose the rest of the games. I think it's going to be a 4-1 win for the Indians. I really like Terry Francona in the World Series. Yesterday was his first loss ever in a World Series game. And
He really doesn't have much to do with the outcome.
I think a manager is a rather...
It's important, but players are far more important than the manager on a game-to-game basis.
Maybe not so much when you have the Indians bullpen and how you have to really decide when you're going to use Andrew Miller, how you're going to use Andrew Miller.
No, you don't. You just throw him out there and he mows guys down for 3 innings and you call it a day.
Yeah, but are you going to pitch him for 4 innings one game, or are you just going to pitch him for 1 so you have
pitch him as many as you want and he's still going to do what he does.
Pat, you were shaking your head also when he said the Cubs are the best team in baseball. Do you agree with that?
No, I do not agree that the Cubs are the best team in baseball.
Well, it's not exactly arguable, but that's all right.
I'm arguing it right now, so I think it's arguable.
They did have the best record in the major
By far.
leagues.
I don't care. That doesn't mean you're the best team.
I think statistically
I think that's more or less what it means.
No, other teams can have injuries,
Then why do we keep track of records at all? Why do we keep teams' records?
Because that's how you get into the postseason. Doesn't mean you're the best team.
Sure it does.
No, there could be a team in the American League and say the American League is just a much better league than the National League. I'm not saying it is, but I'm just saying. Say one league is just amazing and the other league stinks. You could win all 162 games while another team could win just 95. But if they're playing much better competition, then I think that team's better.
Interesting. Just an interesting point of view right there. So you guys said who thought will win the World Series. Who are your MVPs?
I'm going with Kyle Schwarber. He might not play at the field in the American League parks when they're coming up against Cleveland, but
it's impressive itself that he's even playing.
Yeah,
in
that
this
he's even
series.
playing. He had a huge Game 2, pretty much led the Cubs to victory, and I think he will do that if the series goes back to Chicago. And I think he'll probably come up with a couple of big hits in Cleveland, too, maybe off the bench, or if they do decide to play him in the field.
Pat, you have the Indians winning the series. Who on the Indians team do you think will win MVP?
It's going to be Mike Napoli. He's going to hit some big home runs. He's going to show Cleveland that they can win it all. 2 championships for Cleveland in 1 year. The Cavaliers. Now the Indians. Mike Napoli. He's going to be the guy. Can be pretty powerful when he wants to be. He took care of that sleep apnea issue he used to have, and he is ready to play baseball.
He was very important for the Red Sox in the 2013 ALCS.
Exactly.
I'm going to go with I never said who I thought was going to win the series, but I'm going to go with the Cubs in this one. And I'm going to go with Chris Bryant as the MVP. He just was awarded the Hank Aaron Award, best hitter in the NL. I think he can continue that in the World Series. He's also an MVP candidate. I think he's had some MVP numbers.
You could say he's the front runner for
Yeah.
the NL MVP.
Yeah, I don't think that race is as close as the AL is because it's
Definitely
that's
not,
a
no.
lot more up for grabs. But yeah, I'm going to go with Bryant. I think his bat's going to lead the Cubs to a World Series victory, but I don't think it's going to be in 5 games. I think it's going to be 6 or 7. I think this series has the potential to be one of the best ever and one of the closest ever. In the NFL news, the Seahawks and Cardinals last week on Sunday night, they tied in a 6-6 game in which both kickers missed game-winning field goals, and it all around, Matt, it was a strange game.
Yeah, it was ugly, disgusting, gross. There aren't enough adjectives. There isn't a strong enough adjective to describe how bad it was. and I wish it never happened.
Yeah, Pat, you gotta agree with that, right?
Oh, I think both those teams should be pretty ashamed that their kickers missed game-winning field goals. That's just disgusting. You shouldn't do that.
It's not recommended.
Can you imagine having tickets to a game like that and just
I'd ask for my money back.
yeah, you should at least get a refund for that. Now, just about ties in general for the NFL. Should it be abolished or should it be a tie after 15 minutes of overtime?
I hate ties. I think it's really annoying. But I don't really know if there's much of an alternative for the NFL. I mean, are you really going to let guys go out for like just a half hour, like unlimited time, just knocking their heads into each other? And I don't know. I just don't think it makes a lot of sense for player safety.
Yep. Pat?
You know, I might say we have a field goal kickoff, but in that
That'd
game,
be
nothing
kinda-
would have happened.
You know, that would be kind of cool.
Would have just kept on missing them. No,
I think I'd watch a field goal kickoff.
yeah, but with them, it'd just be miss, 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 because that's
Yeah.
all they do. But I do like ties. I think it's fun to see, you know?
It's not fun to see at
One
all.
team stinks, the other team's good, but that stinking team just isn't bad enough to lose to that good team. That would be wild. That's what was wild in this Arizona and Seahawks game. I like the ties. It's fun. It has some cool playoff implications at the end of the year.
So, would you be interested to see ties in other sports too?
Basketball, yeah, maybe, but certainly not baseball.
Not basketball? Why?
I just think with a higher scoring game, it might be. It's just more interesting. And baseball games just take forever in general. So say you had had some kind of tie implication at the end of the season before the playoffs because two teams tied or something. You'd have to have a whole nother baseball game. Then you have someone pitch. You can't go another game. Like that's just the way baseball is at the end of the season is a lot more complicated in who can play one day and who can't play another day. Or football, you just play every week anyways.
My thoughts are, I do hate ties, but I feel like with how rare they are, they usually happen about once every season or 2 seasons. I say you just keep it because there's really no point of risking like a serious injury by getting into a second overtime period. And it's just so rare because a tie, first of all, you got to be tied after 4 quarters. Then you got to go another 15 minutes without someone scoring a sudden death field goal or touchdown, whatever it may be. So it's just so rare that you might as well just keep it. And if it happens, it just kind of happens.
And another thing for like stats, like say a quarterback has another quarter to play, and then they play. Say they just kept playing.
Stats.
Yeah, they could they could do rather poorly and not score, but go throw out another 200 yards in overtime, and it looks better for them.
I think I know a quarterback you might be thinking of.
Well, Matt Ryan didn't really throw for too many yards in overtime.
Right.
So.
Which brings us to our next subject.
Here we go.
Once again, we talk about Matt Ryan. His team actually just dropped their second straight game last week. I think it was against the Chargers, I believe.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So they lost that game in overtime. However, he did put up 30 points his offense put up 30 points.
Exactly.
Go ahead, Pat.
Okay. First off, I don't know why we're talking about Matt Ryan again. Just like to point that out.
Because you keep denying the fact that he's a good quarterback.
I do, but that's not going to change unless he goes off. So
He
already has. He's done that
several
already.
times.
He did not go off this week, however.
You are yelling. Bring it down.
He did not go off this week.
Much
however.
better. Much better.
273 yards is pretty good. Not like, whoa. I'm not like,
It was an average game, but
my socks are still on my feet.
I think an average game is okay when you've had the season that he's had. He's been outstanding. Of course, you're going to have a few average games thrown in there, maybe even some bad ones.
Yeah, but I mean, he threw a pick.
Wow.
But if you put up 30 points,
That's
usually there's like an
unprecedented.
80% chance you win that game. His defense failed him by giving up 33 points to the Chargers.
He should have scored 34. That's his job, to go out and win football games. And the bottom line is throughout his career, he has not gone out and won football games. He has not won he's only won one playoff game in his, 9-year career? One. And he's had great receivers throughout. He doesn't know how to win. That's his problem. Ship him out. I'd trade him if I were the Falcons right now.
He's doing a decent job of winning this season.
Before the trade deadline, I would toss him all the way out.
Trade Matt Ryan.
Yes.
You would trade the guy who's leading the league in quarterback stats. Like,
Yeah.
across
Pretty much
the board.
every major quarterback stat.
I would, because they're going to get a huge return right now.
No,
'cause
they're
he's
not.
so hot.
There are no huge returns in the NFL.
You never know. With
You
that.
trade
really
players
do.
for picks.
Chandler Jones led
Yeah.
the league in sacks and got traded for like a fourth.
If I'm the Browns, I'm taking Matt Ryan. I'll go take the first pick from the Browns if I'm Atlanta for Matt Ryan.
And what are you gonna do with it?
I draft another quarterback.
Who?
I don't know.
I knew you wouldn't know. He's a poser.
If
And
I
then
were
you trade that pick for when there is a good quarterback coming up in the future or something. I don't know. I'm just kidding. Don't really trade him, but I consider it. I don't know.
all of that for that.
I just don't like him. He's not good.
Yeah, that's
They
I
just
say we
lost
move
to-
on.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
Move
Move
on.
on.
Let's go.
Next topic.
The Philadelphia Eagles hand the Minnesota Vikings their first loss of the season. Both teams off to very hot starts. Matt, I was pretty surprised that the Eagles beat them, but the Eagles are having quite a season.
I think everyone was surprised, and the Eagles have been a bit of a curious team. I mean, they go out and they demolish the Steelers 34-3, and they beat the Vikings handily, who have probably been the best team in the NFL to this point. But then
Guess who they lost to?
the Redskins?
Heck yeah!
Yeah, and then they go out and they lose to a team like the Redskins, who clearly aren't like a top flight team in the NFL. So I mean, it's been very weird season for Philadelphia, but it's clear they have a lot of talent on the roster.
And Pat, how do you feel about the Eagles?
They're just playing well. It's pretty weird. Carson Wentz is great. No one expected their defense to be this good. He still doesn't have any targets to throw to. I think they would be clearly the best team in the NFC East if he had like a really good receiver. But when Jordan Matthews is your number one receiver, you know there's some problems. That's what they need to do in the offseason. Go out and get somebody big.
Well, I mean, Jordan Matthews isn't a horrible receiver.
But, he's not my number one.
He's a good receiver, but if you're looking at like a
Yeah.
World Series, Super Bowl caliber team, you're probably going to want him at number 2 receiver.
Yeah, and he's got like a lot of role-playing weapons. He's got Matthews, he's got Zach Ertz, he's a quality tight end, not a top-tier guy. Nelson Aguilar, I think he was atrocious last year, actually. Like, he had a lot of expectations.
Yeah,
and he
that's all right.
But anyway, I think the Eagles didn't expect them to win that game at all.
I don't think anyone did.
Yeah, I thought the Vikings were going to play well. And then Sam Bradford just laid an egg, which
He did a Sam Bradford.
yeah, a lot of people did. A lot of people expected him to do that in Week 1, and he waited until now to
waited.
do it.
Bench him for Alex Tanney.
Who?
Alex Tanney, the backup tight end for the Titans. Trade for him. Start him. I'm
Why
telling
do
you.
I do this show?
I don't know.
Let's move on.
Okay, we're going to go to our picks now. I'm not really. I just don't understand what you were referring to.
Let's move
there.
on.
We'll start with Pat's Redskins. They head to Cincinnati to take on the 3-4 Bengals. Actually, they won't be heading to Cincinnati. The game's in London. Pat, your pick.
I'm going to have to stick with my 4-3 Washington Redskins. I don't know why I just did that weird thing right there. But Kirk Cousins is playing great. We are going to see Jordan Reed possibly back on the field. Even if he isn't, Vernon Davis is playing A-OK. Matt Jones needs to learn not to fumble the football because they would have won that game last week against the Lions. They'd be 5-2, not 4-3, but that's okay. They'll play well in London. Kirk Cousins will show him the guns that he has right there. Throw it down the field. I'm seeing a Deshaun Jackson long ball touchdown. I haven't seen one in a little while. And maybe if Jordan Reed's back on the field, he'll have a couple short touchdowns. Defense has been playing pretty good lately. Josh Norman will be back on the field. And I'm liking my Washington Redskins this week against the Cincinnati Bengals, who are still pretty good.
Wow, that was a ton right there.
All right.
I'm going to go with the Bengals. My reasoning is I think the Redskins, with that loss last week to the Lions, they're just going to come back down to earth. I think the momentum's gone. Jordan Reed's not going to play. That's a huge problem.
He might play.
Possibly, probably.
And I think Cousins, being the streaky quarterback that he is now going to fall off, basically.
Fall
And
down to Eli level.
that just doesn't make sense, but that's okay because Eli, has second in the league in passing yards. Anyway, I'm going to go with Cincinnati in London, and I think Andy Dalton's just going to get it done against a subpar Redskins team. Matt.
I got the Bengals in this one. I like the Bengals overall. I think they got a lot of good players, and I like the offense a lot, especially. Ton of weapons. They're going to have Eifert again this week. Probably further along in his recovery than he was last week. Should be able to put up some numbers, and I just think they're too much for that Redskins defense.
The 3-3 Arizona Cardinals will be heading to Carolina to take on the Panthers, who are 1-5, and I don't think anyone expected these two teams to have the records that they have.
Definitely not, but Carolina's been a lot worse than Arizona has. And Arizona still has David Johnson, so got to go with the Cardinals here.
I agree. You got to go with the Cardinals. Carolina's just pathetic. Pretty gross. Their defense is terrible in comparison, and Cam Newton just isn't the Cam Newton we saw last year. He's not going to bring him back to the promised land. Poor Cam Newton, not as good as we thought he was. Arizona, they got David Johnson. He's great. Defense pretty good. Carson Palmer, who cares if he's just mediocre this year? Doesn't matter. They're good.
I was thinking about going with the upset pick and taking Carolina, but after you guys verbalizing all the problems with Carolina, it's like impossible to pick them the way they've been playing. I'm going with the Cardinals. I think they're going to be over 500. Maybe go on a nice run to try to hunt down the Seahawks in the NFC West. I don't think they're going to get them, but I think they could definitely still pick up a wild card spot in the NFC. Oakland heading to Tampa Bay to take on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They're 3-3. Oakland 5-2.
I'm going with Oakland in this one. I love that offense. They've been phenomenal this season, and I think they're going to keep that rolling. Defense, not quite there yet, but it should be enough to contain Jameis Winston and the Bucs.
I'm surprisingly enough, even though I'm a big believer in the Raiders, going to go with Tampa Bay. I feel like it's Jameis Winston's time to shine. He's just had a mediocre season this far. He's going to show that there's a reason he was picked over Mariota last season as the #1 pick. He's going to toss a couple long TDs to Mike Evans and Jaquez Rodgers.
Jaquiz.
Jaquiz. I don't know. He's going to get us some good rushing here.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Raiders. They've just been playing great football this year. Derek Carr has really stepped up. I think a lot of people expected him to play well, but I don't know if they expected him and the Raiders to play as well as they have. Got to go with the Raiders over the Buccaneers. Green Bay at Atlanta.
I'm sticking with somewhat cooled off hand and going with the Falcons here. I think Matt Ryan is going to have a pretty good game. It's not a great Green Bay defense he's going up against, and I think he's going to do plenty to win, along with Devontae Freeman on the ground.
I think that the Green Bay Packers will get a win.
I couldn't have predicted that. Wow.
The season. I think Aaron Rodgers is a better quarterback than Matt Ryan.
It's been embarrassing.
Hasn't been this year.
All right. Still think he's a better quarterback than Matt Ryan. I think their defense isn't terrible. And
It's not. I didn't say that.
Okay. I just think the Green Bay Packers are better.
I didn't say they had a terrible defense.
I didn't say you did.
Yeah,
like, why'd you-
I just saying they aren't terrible.
Okay.
Okay. Green Bay's
Sure.
got a solid front four. They can stop the run well, but their secondary is very depleted. They got injuries all over the place there. I got to go with the Falcons. I think Matt Ryan's going to take advantage of that. And Aaron Rodgers has just been very bad this year. So I'm going to go with the Falcons in Atlanta. The 3-4 Chargers take on the 5-2 Denver Broncos. These two teams just played each other on Thursday night. The Chargers actually got the victory. Matt, you going to go with the Chargers?
No, I mean, the Broncos played terribly when they played on, I believe it was Thursday night a couple of weeks ago. But I still think the Broncos are one of the best teams in the league and definitely far superior to the Chargers. So I think they should be able to win this one fairly easily, which they should have done a couple of weeks ago.
Pat?
I wouldn't say they're one of the best teams in the league, but I do think they're better than San Diego. San Diego is coming off 2 hot wins, though, against Denver and Atlanta. But Denver, Trevor Siemian just knows how to kind of get it done, being probably, I think, the most mediocre quarterback so far this season in the NFL. He hasn't done anything exciting, but he hasn't done anything bad.
Really, he really has. He's like the new Alex Smith.
Yeah. I'm going to go with Denver in this game, too. The Chargers are just very good at blowing leads. They're kind of like the Giants last year. They almost actually blew the lead in that game. They got kind of fortunate with that Demaryius Thomas late fumble. But I'm going to go with Denver. I think Siemian's just going to do enough like he always does. C.J. Anderson may be out. I don't think that's going to be a big problem with how good the Broncos defense is, so I'm going to go with Denver. New England at Buffalo. This game, it's a little more interesting than people probably originally thought it was going to be, with the fact that the Bills beat the Patriots earlier this year, and B, the Bills, I should say, have surprisingly played pretty well so far this year.
But coming off a loss against the eventual AFC champion Dolphins.
True.
I think the Patriots are still far better than the Bills. I mean, obviously they had Brissett in at quarterback the first time they played, and I think it'll be very different this time around. I think the Patriots will easy W.
You mentioned the Dolphins. We don't really have they're on a bye week this week. But how about Jay Ajayi playing very well the last couple of weeks?
The best player in the NFL, first ballot Hall of Famer.
Pat, you.
Definitely the Patriots. The Buffalo Bills just lost the Miami Dolphins. That's pretty pathetic.
Yeah, they did.
So Patriots all the way. Tommy Blue Eyes will throw a couple touchdowns, and Brady and the Patriots will easily beat Rex Ryan and his actually pretty good Bills.
Yeah, for all those reasons, I'm taking the Patriots. There's really nothing much else to say. Sunday night game, Philly going to Dallas. Two teams in the NFC East that have been very good, and I think a lot better than people expected them to be.
I'm going with the Eagles, coming off that big win against the Vikings. I think they're going to keep the momentum going, but I don't really feel good about this pick because any week they're liable to just have a bad game.
I'm certainly going to go with Dallas. I think this is Dak Prescott's kind of shining moment. If he does well, it's his job over Romo. When Romo gets back, I still think it'll be his job, even if he does just mediocre. But if he does poorly, that's a good excuse for Jerry Jones to go with his boy, Tony Romo, to get back in there. And I think Philadelphia is just too up and down to really pick them to win anything.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Cowboys. I think Prescott's poised to have a good game. Same with Elliott. And let me just say, if Jerry Jones decides to start Tony Romo over Dak Prescott, it might be one of the dumbest decisions I've probably ever seen by a football owner. I really don't think Jerry Jones is that bright of a person. I was about to say no offense. No, not no offense. I'm a Giants fan. I don't like you at all.
Jerry, we know you're watching.
Yeah, last game, the Vikings will head to Chicago on Monday night. I think we all have the same pick for this one.
It's pretty self-explanatory. Vikings lost last week, first loss of the season, but it's the Bears.
This is a great bounce back game.
The Bears are probably the bottom 2 team in the league with them and the Browns.
Yeah.
So I don't really think much more needs to be said.
I'm going with the Bears. Just kidding. I'm going with the Vikings. The Bears stink.
They do.
The Vikings
they do.
are great.
Yeah, it's amazing how quickly the Bears have fallen off. I think 5 years ago they were in an NFC Championship game, and all of a sudden just disappears. Vikings all the way. We now head to the NBA, which has just tipped off this past week. The Warriors are 0-1. They lost their first game of the season to the San Antonio Spurs. Matt, pretty surprising.
Yeah, I think it's surprising, but I don't know. At the same time, part of me isn't too surprised. I mean, whenever you see these like super teams put together, usually it takes them a little while to figure it all out. And also, I think what's really been overlooked in this whole process with Durant and the Warriors is that even though they added a top 5 player in the NBA and one of the best players probably of all time when he retires, they completely gutted their bench to do so. They lost Andrew Bogut, they lost Harrison Barnes, Livingston, Barbosa, which doesn't seem like a lot initially, but then when you have to bring in guys like David West and JaVale McGee, it really shows how different that team is. I think that bench is just really bad, and that they don't really have a true rim protector. So I think that they aren't quite the team everyone thinks they're going to be.
And you look at the Spurs, they brought in obviously a less talented guy than Kevin Durant and Pau Gasol, but still a very talented player. And they also kept their bench. Their bench is still one of the best in the NBA, and you see them end up being victorious against the Golden State Warriors. Pat, your thoughts on the Warriors starting off 0-1?
Pretty pathetic. They just added Kevin Durant to their team, and they just lost. But the Spurs are pretty good. Kevin Durant played well. The rest of the team didn't. They should probably get back on track pretty soon, and they're obviously the favorite in the NBA.
And Matt, one question. Is this Steph Curry's team or is it Kevin Durant's team?
This is still Steph Curry's team. This is Steph Curry's... No, I'm not going to say this is Steph Curry's league. This is LeBron's league.
Yep.
But this is Steph Curry's team for sure.
So the Pelicans also kicking off their first game of the year. They had 50 points from Anthony Davis, 16 rebounds, and they still found a way to lose to the Minnesota Timberwolves. Matt, you got it.
Unbelievable.
What a wasted performance.
I think almost half their points. I think they had something like 103, 104, and they still couldn't get it done. That's terrible. They are not a good team, and we will see that this season, but I think we'll also be able to see that Anthony Davis is one of the best players in the NBA, without a doubt.
Pat, you just talked about the Warriors being pathetic. That sounds pretty pathetic, too.
That was very pathetic. Anthony Davis, probably the best power forward. Power forward, yeah.
He's a power forward, yes.
Yeah.
Slowly but surely, Patrick is learning each week about the NBA.
Yeah. By the end of the season, I'll know everything. I like Anthony Davis. He's tall. He went to Kentucky.
He did do that, yeah.
I know everything. And 16 rebounds, that's pretty good.
Yeah, it is.
Also, making his debut, actually, for the 76ers, Joel Embiid missing the first 2 seasons after he was drafted due to a foot injury. And he made his debut last night, scored 20 points and 7 rebounds. And, Matt, if you're a Sixers fan, that's just what you want to see.
It could not have gone any better for Embiid. He looked great. He's showing his full arsenal. He's really him and Karl Towns really like the prototypical new age NBA centers. They can spread the floor. They have range out to the 3-point line. They have good post moves. Athletic guys. They're fast. They can protect the rim. I think Embiid's a great player, and they're gonna like having him for a long time.
And also, as far as the Sixers go, you got Ben Simmons injured. When he comes back, he's obviously going to bring a big spark to this team. You got a loaded front court with Embiid, Noel, and Jahlil Okafor. How do you think the Sixers will surprise some people this year?
No, I don't. They're still very young, very inexperienced. I think that they're definitely going to have to trade one or two people from that front court because you did leave out Dario Saric too.
True.
They're loaded with like top 5 picks in those positions, and they're going to need to get rid of one or two they have to decide who they want to develop and who they want to commit to long term. And until they do that, they're just going to have a big log jam, and they're not going to play very well.
Would you say top 5 pick for them this year?
Definitely.
Top 5, okay. Now James Harden, who's now a point guard for the Houston Rockets, making a position change. Looked very good in his first game, but also a losing performance when the Rockets lost to the Lakers. He scored 34 points and had 17 assists, and once again, Pat, pretty pathetic.
Yeah, that's pathetic. I remember back when he was on the Thunder, and he was like the third guy.
Look at this guy.
Yeah, behind Westbrook and Durant, and everyone's like, oh, Harden, he's not that great. And then he was great. And then he went to the Rockets, and now he's great. And now they're like, okay, we'll build the team around you. You'll be the point guard, rocking around, 34 points, 17 assists. That's great, but pathetic showing for the rest of the team.
Yeah, this team just got rid of Dwight Howard. It had to be done. Dwight Howard wasn't giving them much. Gives Clint Capella a chance to maybe break out, but I'm not expecting huge things from Clint Capella. But
He's got potential.
Yeah, definitely. The Celtics, opening up last night, had a huge lead going in the fourth quarter and then kind of let it just dissipate against the Nets. But they did end up squeaking out a victory. Matt, who do you think played the best for the Celtics?
That's tough to call. I mean, Isaiah had a great game, but I think I'm going to give it to the new guy, Al Horford. He showed exactly why Boston brought him in. He was fantastic in all phases of the game last night, scoring, rebounding. He had 4 blocks.
Yep, all in the first half.
All in the first half. He was extremely impressive as a rim protector, and I think that he is absolutely perfect for this team.
And your thoughts on Jaylen Brown making his debut, the 3rd overall pick?
I was impressed. He put up, I believe, 9 points. He didn't get a ton of minutes, but played well in the minutes that he had. I think he had about 18 minutes, and he just showed me why Danny Ainge loves this guy so much. He's just an absolute scrapper. He goes after the ball. He's like a Danny Ainge kind of guy, very athletic. Doesn't have all the skills yet, but he's got everything that you can't teach, and those are the kinds of guys that Danny loves, and sometimes they work out great.
Yeah, a lot of raw talent with Jaylen Brown. Now the other team that could be challenging the Cleveland Cavaliers in the East, and that's the Toronto Raptors. DeMar DeRozan with 40 points last night. Jonas Valanciunas, 32 points and 11 rebounds. An impressive start, Matt, for the Raptors in their season.
For sure. They have a great top 3 players with DeRozan, Valanciunas, and Kyle Lowry. And I think that they're definitely going to challenge the Celtics for that number 2 spot in the East, and that'll be a very interesting race.
Final question here. Pat, we'll start with you. Who will be better, the Raptors or the Celtics?
The Celtics, because Brad Stevens knows how to get it done with that team. You never know. Sometime in the season, they could trade for Gordon Hayward, toss in Shelvin Mack. That was something I know Brad Stevens would love because that's how he got to the NCAA finals with Butler, which he can probably do again this year with Boston. Possibly take down the Cavaliers if he can really show them.
Matt, who do you think will be better?
I think the Celtics will get the 2 seed, but I wouldn't be overly surprised if the Raptors do edge them out. I think the X factor here is Jonas Valanciunas, and whether or not he can sustain not really that level of play, because 32 and 11 is a great game, and that's like you don't see that often. But if he can just sustain like 20 and 10 a night and become one of the better centers in the game, I think that gives them a good shot at dethroning the Celtics.
I'm going to agree with Pat. I'm going to go with Celtics, and mainly because of Brad Stevens. I mean, I'm looking at 2 teams that are very close in talent, and I think the X factor is going to be coaching. Dwayne Casey, very good coach for the Raptors.
Also related to Colin Casey.
Not at all. But the Celtics have Brad Stevens. Brad Stevens is going to be one of the best coaches. Well, he already is one of the best coaches in the NBA, but he could be one of the best coaches of all time when all is said and done. Well, that's all the time we have here today on Spartan Center. Colin Casey, joined by Pat Varhue and Matt Rodolakis. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time.